Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week in partnership with the Daily Beast. Paris correspondent Aaron Zaleski is with us. So is Anne Bagamary of the International New York Times, Time Magazine contributor Vivian Walt, and Guillaume Debray, the senior correspondent for French television station TF1. The title of your book's a bit of a spoiler here. Washington, How Money Ruined American Democracy. Does it start with Citizens United and that ruling by the Supreme Court that basically said that corporations were the same as private people?
Yeah, of course it's central to the book, but it tells the story that, all of you knows about how the immense amount of money that's being poured into the political system in America has transformed the American democracy, and the fact that close to $3 billion are going to be spent this year, that 60% of senators are millionaires in the US. And when I wrote this book, I wanted to tell the French reader that are going to read this book that there's many things to copy from the American democracy, but not this one. We shouldn't deregulate the financing of politics, that it should be highly regulated. Otherwise, we're going to have a system that's, that is problematic, to say the least.
Yeah, this issue, and of course the next President of the United States will be naming at least one, possibly many more Supreme Court justices. That'll be a key issue. Before the break, Guillaume, we were talking about how there's a war of the sexes when you speak to pollsters between women supporting Hillary Clinton and men supporting Donald Trump. What's your take on that?
Well, I don't know what it says about American men, and I don't want to comment on that. But what's for sure is that there's a positive way of looking at it, which is it spurred an immense debate in America about how men should behave with women. We were talking about Jennifer Flowers 24 years ago, and it didn't prevent Bill Clinton from being elected. This huge, scandal, both because of his actions and his words, might prevent him from getting the White House. A few weeks ago, everybody thought the race was closed. That might be the pivotal moment because women and some men are outraged at his behavior.
One other point that was brought up, because it seems like a million years ago now, that debate last Sunday, but it was Donald Trump disavowing his vice president when it comes to how to handle Vladimir Putin and Syria.
Yes, that is amazing. In fact, there's been such a kind of tsunami of revelations and scandals that you actually have to walk back a little bit to, think about all the incredible things that have happened. That was fairly unprecedented. I don't think we've ever seen a president basically abandon their running mate and with such dismissiveness and disrespect. Here's a man who clearly is not a politician in any conventional sense of the word that we've come to expect.
Populism, the blowback against globalization, the argument over how to handle Putin, all common talking points with France's own presidential race, which Thursday staged its first ever American-style primary debate. 7 candidates on stage, all eyes on the frontrunner, former Prime Minister Alain Juppé, who's made a remarkable comeback after years in the political desert that followed his conviction over a party financing scandal. Both he and former President Sarkozy, reminded by their rivals of cases past, well, in the case of Sarkozy, cases still ongoing.
Listen, I'm not going to rehash this old story. The Court of Appeals made it clear that I was not guilty of any personal enrichment and that I shouldn't serve as the scapegoat for a collective liability. If the French people believe my mistake rules me out, then they won't vote for me.
All right, and Nicolas Sarkozy, who answered in kind, saying, I've been accused so many times, and yet I've never been convicted. And Bagamary, when you watched this, how does the French Les Républicains primary debate compare to an American Republican debate?
Well, in the first place, I really like the podiums with the numbers, nice and big, because then that removes the temptation to chatter about how so-and-so's not getting enough time, so-and-so's time is up. It just removes a whole layer of noise around this show. And let's face it, it's a show. These are shows. This has one big element in common with the American debates, and that is it is performance. You get up there, and it's going to be reported on as such.
5 million viewers, I think.
Yeah, okay. It was an incredibly popular show. Yeah. I don't know how Question pour un champion usually lines up, that quiz show in the evening, but no, it's going to be reported on as that. The American debates are reported as that. What they looked like, what they wore, who looked presidential, who had a smooth patter, who lost their cool, who got this time and who got that time. It's going to be reported on as that. It's difficult to take it seriously. I'm kind of sad as a French and American citizen to see France emulating this part of the American campaign.
But it tells us more about how we do our job than how they do their jobs. Their job in a democracy is to debate, is to exchange. I'm not defending this, debate, rather, but we should do a better job at questioning them on the whole issues, the big issues, on their differences, and not focused on we want to sell papers, we want to have viewers, and I think the way journalism covers politics now is also a problem.
I would agree with you, except for the fact that this structure is set up not by the journalists, not by the television shows. It's set up by the parties. It's set up by the political apparatus.
Not this one.
Well, that one was set up by TF1?
Yeah, this one was a big
I
debate.
take it
was a
back.
big debate. Of course, the candidate were there, their staff were there, but there was a big problem with French politicians. They adopted, a rule that is unprecedented in French politics, which that politician had to speak for 1 minute. And believe me, for the staffers of each candidate, that was a revolution. For a French politician to speak only for 1 minute, it's already, extremely difficult.
Or getting 7 of them up on stage.
Or getting 7 on tape. And but the reason why it was 1 minute is because you had 7 in TF1 and RTL wanted to do a big show, so.
Aaron Zaleski, your view on this Americanization of the French race for president?
I was first and foremost, just because I've been so, I don't want to use traumatized, it's a bit of a strong word, but I had just come from watching the U.S. debates, and I was just struck by the restraint and the politeness that the candidates displayed versus what I had just seen across the Atlantic. Specific, I mean, even the jabs at Sarkozy were quite restrained. Personally, if I was under investigation, I wouldn't be running, but it wasn't, you should be in jail, we're going to put you, I just noticed that there was a difference in the way they interacted.
And on the left side, Vivian Walt, this book that French President François Hollande put out this week, it's called A President Shouldn't Say That. He talks about his love life. He distanced himself from his own party on issues like how to handle jihadists. He's for a more law and order approach. And now his own party is turning on him. You even heard the Prime Minister and the Speaker of Parliament criticize him.
I know this is really an extraordinary thing, but, what's so amazing is that the party appears to be fairly comfortable kind of like sidelining him. And this has been going on, obviously, for months, beginning with, the whole issue of Macron and his position and just essentially undermining any chance that he might have for re-election.
Where you think the socialists are writing off 2017?
I mean, I think it's way too soon for them to do that, but it came across to those of us who are not voters, but looking at it as being like that.
Let's ask the Frenchman here. Guillaume Devray, you agree?
Not entirely, because I think Hollande is dead set on running. And this book tells you that he thinks that by occupying the airwaves, by being present, by being the center of the race, he will attract the attention of the media. And the other candidate, the small candidate, Montebourg and all of them, are going to be thrown into oblivion because he will be the big gorilla, so to speak, no disrespect, of course, in the room. So by attracting the limelight, that's his strategy, I think, to go all the way to the primary and win it. Whether he's going to win the election, I think it's way too soon to say, and it's going to be complicated. But don't write him off yet.
Anne Baghamary?
Well, it's not unheard of, a rose garden strategy. The sitting president, has an enormous platform and an enormous ability to attract.
But what is it? I think his popularity is close to the number of the unemployment figure in France.
Okay. What's the alternative? If you've got a system where you've essentially got, let's give the Front National the status that I think they want. If you've got essentially three major parties that are going to present, of which you have to have two candidates, socialists are still a major party. Where's their other candidate? I mean, what other strategy is going to work? I agree, it's way too soon to write off Hollande. It's way too soon to write off anybody. The election isn't until next year.
I mean, I would just say that, looking at the Republican debate last night, and also at all these people now declaring themselves on the left, I think there's a good lesson to be learned from the U.S. Republican primaries, which is that you had 16 candidates, and the guy that could be heard above the crowd was the most extreme candidate of the bunch. Otherwise, how do you possibly cut yourself loose from the crowd? And it seems like the same could happen here. There's a very crowded field on both sides.
But Hollande has one strategy. It's named Sarkozy.
Right.
If Sarkozy gets the nomination, he's banking on it. And if he gets the nomination, he thinks he can rally the center-left, the center-right that doesn't want Sarkozy back in power. Whether it's going to work or not is way too soon. But I think it's going to be very complicated if Juppé gets it, much more complicated to qualify for the runoff than if Sarkozy gets it.
We're going to turn our attention now to Africa and Nigeria. 21 freed, 21 of the more than 200 Chibok girls abducted by Boko Haram in the spring of 2014. Their liberation brokered by the International Red Cross in Switzerland. The government denies doing any deals or freeing any Boko Haram prisoners.
God truly helped us in the negotiations. There were absolutely no exchange of any kind.
No exchange of any kind, Vivian Walt.
Well, I mean, I think we'll learn the details of that in the days to come. I think there's some very interesting things about this. One is the Swiss government and the role that it played, and the fact that there was finally, after 2 years, more than 2 years, some kind of intermediary neutral force that could step in. The other thing is, of course, the incredible contrast between the current president and his predecessor, who completely bungled the kidnapping. And in fact, I was in Abuja right after the kidnapping, where at a press conference with Goodwill Jonathan, which he said, oh, there's nothing we could have done anyway. Well, there was plenty. And the final thing is, there are 21 girls released, but there are maybe 1,000 people, 1,000 kids still in captivity.
Yeah, there was a Human Rights Watch saying that more than 300 elementary school children were abducted in November 2014 in Damasak, not too far from...
Damasak, right on the border of Niger. And almost no international attention has been paid to these kids. These were elementary kids. They were not, high school seniors as the Chibok girls were. These are little children who have vanished for 2 years. So it's just the most ghastly situation. And far, everybody's celebrating the return of these girls. It's just a reminder that this is just a tiny fraction of those missing.
Aaron Zaleski?
In your opinion, I mean, since you've been there and you've been covering this, why the contrast in the publicity for the Chibok girls versus the elementary?
I did call somebody in Nigeria, one of the human rights organizations in Nigeria today, to say, what happened to these girls and why hasn't been no publicity about them? And they said the problem was just simply one of timing, that these 300 were kidnapped right at the time of the Nigerian elections, and the whole world was talking about who was going to be the president, and they were just forgotten about. It's a very, very remote area, and it's kind of a tragedy.
And by the way, Nigeria's president in Berlin this Friday, he had made the liberation a pledge at his inauguration, but when he turned heads during the press conference with Angela Merkel, it was when he rebutted his own wife, Aisha Buhari, who told the BBC in an interview she won't vote for her husband next time if he doesn't shake up the government.
I don't know which party my wife belongs to, but she belongs to my kitchen and my living room and the other room. So I claim superior knowledge over her and the rest of the opposition.
Vivian Walt, can you? It's been a crash course on Nigerian politics for the German media. They've been scrambling, our correspondent was telling us, after these pronouncements.
Well, it's a steep learning curve on Nigerian politics, but yeah, I mean,
All right.
I'm not sure what to respond to this. It's very strange.
But it's a sad story because I think what we fail to perceive is that the Chibok girls are the exception rather than the rules, in the sense that they are the only one we're talking about, and not just in Nigeria. So the only ones that capture a little bit the international community's attention, but the international community doesn't care, doesn't do anything. It's the Swiss government who is Swiss.
It's outsized coverage, or is any coverage better than no coverage? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't even know if I can answer that. Of course it's better, but the problem is there's so many crises going on, and there is no, I guess, lobby. There's no one is, apart from the Chibok girls, which was, in a way the campaign was structured to get attention. But, I think the international community doesn't care about this situation, which is extremely sad, but,
Yeah.
All right, if you had to put the liberation of those 21 girls to music, we came up with one appropriate tune, perhaps. Let me take a listen here. Africans will recognize the distinctive voice of Senegalese pop star Youssou N'Dour. Americans will probably note the lyrics of the 2016 Nobel Literature Laureate, Mr. Robert Zimmerman, a.k.a. Bob Dylan. Anne Bagamurray, by the way, no mention of the honor or whether he'll go to Stockholm for Dylan himself. On Thursday night, he played a concert in Las Vegas. The set included classics such as Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, It's Over Now, Baby Blue, and Blowing in the Wind. Dylan playing guitar and piano. No mention of Stockholm. Do you think he's going to go to Stockholm?
Oh, I don't know. And if he does, I don't know if he's going to communicate it. One of the fascinating things about Bob Dylan, one of the fascinating things about any artist is the mystery around which he creates around himself. And Dylan his lyrics are part of that, his music is part of that, what he's going to do next is all part of that. I'm not an enormous Dylan fan. I think he had one fantastic song, which was Tangled Up in Blue. And I think that's one of the best songs ever written. Is he a creator of literature? I think there's a strong argument to be made that it is. He's touched a lot of people. He's pushed boundaries in his own realm, and he's helped music lyrics spill over into the realm of poetry, literature, and even theater. So, it's a terrific play. But I think to speculate on whether he'll go, I think that's probably what he wants. So let's do it. Let's wonder about it until it actually happens. It's part of the mystery that is.
Aaron Zaleski?
There seems to be kind of a battle of the generations over this. We were talking earlier about battle of the sexes, but it seems like all of the older writers I know who came of age when he was at the height of his fame, they sort of saw he resonated with this generation that lived this very tumultuous decade. So they're all saying, oh, this is great, it's literature. And then the younger writers are just sort of saying, what? They don't understand.
Of course, there is a precedent. The French writer Jean-Paul Sartre refused the Nobel Literature Prize. And he said, I don't want to be labeled as a Nobel laureate. Should Bob Dylan go and pick up his prize?
I think it should. It's pretty noble, so to speak. But... yeah, I mean, I don't know if what I like about the fact that they picked him personally is I think he's one of the last engaged politicians. There's politics in his music. And of course, the new generation, there's way less politics in it. And so if Winston Churchill got the Nobel Prize of Literature, why not Bob Dylan, I think?
I mean, unlike Anne, I'm a huge Dylan fan. I can list like 25 songs that I, feel like the soundtrack to my life. But you can't help to think that there's something just a tiny bit contriving about this choice. The Nobel Swedish Academy that's been criticized for so long about being out of touch and kind of old-fashioned and picking
Well,
like
not giving it to the
obscure
likes of
people.
novelist Philip Roth. Or...
Exactly, Philip Roth, Don DeLillo, I mean, all sorts of people. And never mind never having given it to James Joyce or, you know, and... you know, it's a little bit like having chosen Obama for the Nobel Peace Prize, like
Really?
when he'd been in office for 2 minutes, you know. It felt to me a little bit contrived and but thrilling, great. I mean, his lyrics are amazing, so...
I think the thing that makes me happy about this is that I think this opens the door for someone who I think should get the Nobel Prize at some point. That's Lin-Manuel Miranda, the author of Hamilton, who is a songwriter and a
not
literature
prolific
creator.
like Dylan with a repertoire over decades.
And as I said, I think one of those songs was really, really good. But, you know, that's the great thing about these prizes. You know, everybody has an opinion. And the Swedish Academy doesn't have to explain itself. And in fact, it really hasn't explained itself. It's like one sentence about why they gave him this award. They're being mysterious, too.
Okay, not so mysterious. They compared him to a tradition of literature dating back to the Greeks, in fact. We'll leave it there for now, and we'll see if Bob Dylan does show up in Stockholm. I want to thank our panel once again: Aaron Zaleski, Vivian Walt, Guillaume Debray, and Bagamarie. Stay with us, though. Our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to Emma James.
Hi there.
What's the Bob Dylan song that popped into your mind when you heard the news?
Gosh, do you know, I'm really not that big a fan.
Oh, dear.
I know I probably shouldn't say that, but
That's okay.
his voice gets on my wick.
Okay, I feel old. All right, now let's talk.
I know he's a great songwriter and all that, but yeah, he doesn't do it for me.
All right, neither does Donald Trump for a lot of people.
You could say that. Yes, it's been a really unprecedented week in US politics. We've had revelations, remarks, we've had accusations. And what's interesting is that there's one Twitter trend that I don't think anyone would have predicted that's come out from all this. And it came after 538 released a series of maps showing what the country would look like if it was just women who voted in the case of this particular one. Unsurprisingly, they point that it would be a Clinton landslide, 458 electoral votes for Hillary Clinton as opposed to just 80 for Donald Trump. Then you see the picture change very radically indeed when it is just the men voting. That way round, it's 350 to Trump and 188 to Clinton. Now, what Trump supporters have done is they've hit back with a novel idea, you could say, and the hashtag Repeal the 19th was born. And what we have seen is tweets like this one. I would be willing to give up my right to vote to make this happen. Lilo313 says, I would gladly waive my right to vote to solidify the win, because, of course, the 19th Amendment to the US Constitution is the one that gave women, or white women, I should say, the right to vote back in 1920. So we're going back almost a century. But these women, they purport to be women on Twitter. Of course, we never know who's actually behind the keyboard. But these are women who say that they would give up their right to vote if it meant that Trump could get into the White House. This one, men should never have given women the right to vote. Haunted Holly, interestingly enough, describes herself as, on her Twitter bio, as wanting to stop white genocide, and she also says that feminism is cancer. This is another one of her tweets, just to give you an idea of what these people are like. Dear feminists clutching pearls over Trump tapes, of course, the comments he made about grabbing women, groping them, kissing them, whether or not they consented. Everyone knows what your favourite book is. This is why no one takes you seriously. And it has a cartoon of a woman holding 50 Shades of Grey, as though that is in some way relevant. So it is quite bizarre, but people have been hitting back, as you might expect, on Twitter. And we've got tweets like this one. Me headed to the polls after seeing that Repeal the 19th is literally trending. And hopefully it will make women make sure that they get out and vote. Why is repeal the 19th a thing? Apparently weak men can't handle empowered women. And this one too from Kate Collins. Maybe only women should have the right to vote. Men are clearly too emotional and prone to overreactions. Of course, something that is very regularly said to women who, whenever they get angry about anything at all. And this one is a different kind of take on what should be removed from the American Constitution. Dude, instead of repeal the 19th, let's do repeal the 22nd and get Barack Obama for 4 more years, because, of course, he's not allowed to stand again. This Twitter user wants him to be there for another 4 years in the White House. And Frank Underwood, the fictional character, of course, from House of Cards, had this to say: anyone who thinks they can repeal the 19th never met Claire, referring to one of the show's characters there, of course. But it seems that nothing can deter Trump's core supporters from backing their man. I'm not going to scroll down. In fact, it is actually cut off at that point. I won't open the picture up. We have people, women, turning up at these public events in support of Donald Trump, wearing things like this. Trump can grab my, and down below is an arrow. It is really quite disturbing to see how women have reacted to these tapes. This person tweets in response: if Trump met this woman, he would call her unattractive, fat and a liar, and I wonder if she'd still want to wear his T-shirt. Now, as for other T-shirts that we've seen, there's this one too, seated prominently behind Trump, a woman with a T-shirt saying, "Hey Trump, talk dirty to me." It really is quite shocking. This one, though, I think, on the T-shirts issue, has to be my favourite. Watch out, Donald, this one is armed. And I even saw pictures, too, of a group of teenagers wearing, boys and girls, wearing T-shirts saying, grab my, I won't say the word, I dare you. So there you go.
All right. Well, keeping it all above board. Emma James,
about.
many thanks. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in The World This Week.